Hey, good people, this is your NI Dom, back with another YouTube reflection. And this is a personal journal for contemplative people looking to think, grow, and have impact in the world. So, hey, I thought I was done with part two, but after I hit the stop button, another thought came up. So, I'm here to do a part three. So, I listened to some content from the personality hacker around the TeFi polarity or axis where they're connected. Those are two cognitive functions in the MBTI system, and they feed off of one another. Like they are connected to the same line. It's like a spectrum, if you will. And in part one, I talked about how I've been thinking about that polarity as it relates to intimacy. And then in part two, I just was thinking about how it impacts me, how I've been how I show up professionally and personally. And so, one of the things I wanted to do in this third part is to talk about this podcast project, podcast number 2, Your Anti Dom, because of all of the work I've been doing around authenticity and confronting the self, particularly in this last season, season 9, that started in August of 2024. I'm feeling more able to integrate. So let me just take my 2 podcasts to illustrate this division that exists within me, okay? Podcast number 1, which I've taken a break from, but I keep telling myself I need to go back. So I still pay for it to be produced. I still get downloads and all of that. And I'm not going to change that podcast. I'm just going to refine it to align itself more with the work that I've been doing with. So my business has been evolving as work does. And so podcast number 1 needs to evolve with it. Okay, so it's not going to be changed, it's just going to be calibrated. But in that podcast, that's my public self. That's me with my 3 degrees. That's me showcasing my 30 years of practice. And it's very important that at least in the past, it was very important that I presented myself in a way that felt authentic to me for my public life. So as I said in that part 2, I have produced some big things in my life. Well, podcast number 1 had to reflect my capacity to produce those things. So oftentimes people look at me and they don't know, they don't look at me as a person that could have done the things that I've done. And in that episode, when Antonia and Joel from the Personality Hacker, when they were talking about the TIFE polarity, they were just saying unhealthy TIFE will like showboat and brag about what they've done because they're trying to do image management, manage their reputation. And I can relate to that. Is that an unhealthy thing to do? I'm not 100% sure. Because if the next thing that I'm trying to do is dependent on people knowing that I can do a thing and I don't look the part, if you look at me for whatever reason, because of my gender, because of my race, because of my socioeconomic status, by how I dress, by how I talk, by where I live, by what I own, if you look at those things and you determine, as we do, what I'm capable of, that I have to give, well, I don't have to, but I have found that I giving my portfolio shakes things up a little bit. So I have a guy who I talk to on a regular basis, and he's not the only one. And people go, apparently, you're accomplished. There's an undertone. Oh my God, what is that? Hold on a second. I'm looking out my window. Hold on a second. Okay, I'm back. I've been paused for about 5 minutes, so I don't even know where I left off. And I'm not going to re-record. I'm looking out the window that is like an upper level window, and it's fall when all the leaves are gone off the trees, and I see something black crawling on these very thin branches. I'm like, what is that? That is not a bird. What is it? And it's either it's either a cat. I'm so sorry. It's either a cat or like a possum. Because of course I don't need glasses, right? And of course I skipped high school so much that I missed most of biology. So I have no idea what these creatures are. But anyway, it was very distracting. So anyway, okay, let me try to get back to whatever I was saying. I think I was just talking about my need to let people know what I've done, because we size in our social structure, our brain is prone to making really quick decisions. And oftentimes we take in a person visually and we make assessments based on what we can see, and then we allow that to determine what they're capable of not. So because I don't carry myself in a way that would showcase the things that I've done, and I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to do that, to be honest with you. Because it's not, you know what I mean? It's not about looking the part. I've done what I've done. I do what I do. But when I find that what I'm unwilling to do is be in a conversation with somebody, I'm willing to do two things. I'm unwilling to look a part, and I'm unwilling to be overlooked. I'm unwilling for my capacities to be overlooked. So I assert it. I've done this, and that. Now I don't say it that way. I don't say everything I've done. And I love it when I'm in an environment where I don't have to say it, when somebody says it for me. And I really love, like in the space that I'm in right now, because of everything I've put out in the digital world. And you Google me, I love that my portfolio's out there and I don't have to say anything. And I can always tell when somebody has done, I'm getting better rather, learning, seeing than somebody's done their homework on me. And I'd love to be, maybe on the process tomorrow on the podcast about this guy, and really struggling with this movement in education to look at data, excuse me, excuse me, what's called disproportionality data, that looks at the data of students who are racially marginalized. They look at other demographics, but the major group that people have the strongest pushback on would be around race. And so they're looking at this data. Management is starting to make decisions about staffing as relating to this data, and people do not like it. And then what they're trying to do is move about and discredit the data. So the guy starts talking to me the other day about this data. Now, I'm functioning as a limited term teacher. That's not my background, though. Well, I've been a teacher in the past, but I would say that's my full identity as a practitioner. But that's the role I'm in right now. This is the dilemma. This is the one problem with this ground zero strategy that I have. Okay, so I'm talking to him and he brings up his concerns with the data. I'm in a conversation with you. So when he says something about the data, I respond. I said something and he said, well, that's how administrators look at it. I was like, well, I don't know if that's true, but I do have a background in administration, right? So he continues to try to look at the data through this other lens. And my whole argument is that you need to look at the data through both perspectives, through the administrative perspective and through the teacher perspective, because they have a different relationship with the learner. So they both tell a story about this entire thing, or the just thought. Joel from the Power Personality Hacker was using that word a lot. I'm like, yeah, that's a good word. But they both tell the story about the whole. And so you need both perspectives. Well, anyway, he came back and said some things to me that let me know that he went and looked up my background to see why I would not be showing up in the conversation as a teacher, even though I was fulfilling a position, even though for a limited term, as a teacher. So anyway, that's good for me. It sometimes bites me in the ass, right? That's another story. But for the most part, then I don't have to tell people what I've done because it's really important. My production, and this speaks to the other part of the episode from Personality Hacker. My production for me speaks to my capacity, my intellectual capacity. It speaks to my thinking. Whereas, so I give to other people outcomes because I want you, not the only reason, but one of the things is I want you to know what my mind is capable of doing. Whereas TIFE focuses on the mind and then assumes that the behavior will manifest from that. And I'm not here to say it won't, but this is another area that I get in trouble with. People think that I want to share my knowledge, and I don't necessarily want to do that. I want to produce with my knowledge. I want to impact with my knowledge. I want to promote change through my knowledge. And I want you to know that I'm knowledgeable. But my first love would be the impact. And I think to go back to this podcasting project, that's how podcast number 1 is me showing up as a byproduct of my past. Podcast number 2, the one you're listening to now, even though it's on YouTube, is about me just showing up as who I am in all of me. It's not just about production, although I don't hide that. But it's about my interior landscaping, feeling and thinking and being. And I'm getting comfortable with it. Yet, what they said in that podcast is that FI, because it's connected to TE, FI doesn't just want to have an interior landscape. FI wants to do something with it in the world. And I'm semi-doing something with it in the world by way of this podcast number 2. But my name is not attached to it. My face is not attached to it. My body is not attached to it. So it exists as a separate thing. And I have a desire to be more integrated. Yet, I don't want the world to have access to the inner, most personal part of me. So while the part of me wants to make measurable in the world this private thing I'm doing through podcast number 2, there's another side of me that says, I don't want the world to have that side of me. And here I am. That's the conundrum. So that's what I wanted to come back and say with the whole cat in the tree dilemma. That interrupted the reflection in part. But hey, if this reflection has had any value for you, please give it a heart, thumbs up, or a like. If my conversation about the inner world and the outer world and how we present and how do we present, why do we present, about TEFI, TIFE, if any of this relates to a conversation you've had in the world, please take this link and share it with those participants. If my moving about is caused some randomness, I'd love to hear it. You can find me on my website at yourinidom.wordpress.com. You guys, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you. Until I come back, be well. Bye.